What's up, everybody? Welcome to Indie Game Business. I'm Indy. That guy way over there is Jay. He's drinking his coffee. And we got David Logan in the middle. And we got Yoon Sang also here. But you can't see him because he's
hiding.
He's hiding. He's hiding between David and Jay. Oh, thank you for the host or the sub, Indy Davo. Oh, that was you. That was Dave. Thank you, Dave. You got the I love indie games emote right here.
Nice.
That's worth the sub right there.
That is worth the sub right there.
So yes, all right. So long requested show on how to market your Switch game, because it frankly, I mean, what, a year ago maybe when it started taking off, I don't think anyone expected the indie games to take off on the Switch like they have, and now it's a major mover of units. You've got a lot of games on there, and a lot of the indie developers we talk about are like, okay, look, I've released stuff on PC, I've released stuff even on Xbox and PS4. How do we go about marketing our game when we want to bring it over to Switch? Because we haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't seen an original indie game on the Switch yet. Everything has been ports from other platforms. Is that correct? Does anyone know of one?
Like a Switch only game? Is that what you mean?
An indie Switch only game, not like, Mario.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't think we have.
Good question.
I don't know.
So,
Say that's back.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the question that we're starting with, and we're welcoming back David. He's been with us before. Yoon Song is new to the world, and that's probably why he's hiding from us right now.
New to the world.
Well, new to our world. Welcome to the show. And so we're going to start with you. We've asked David this question, and you and I talked about this briefly right before we went on. But tell us how you got into the industry and your career path, since day one, Yoon Song.
Well, my career path in the game industry actually started my freshman year in college. I was in my economics class, and I literally sat there and I was looking at the professor and listening to a lecture. I'm like, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? So I had really that moment where I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't really feel like going to school. It just seemed like a waste of time and money at the time because I wasn't really prepared for it. So like I literally walked out. The professor's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm quitting school."
Video games.
Yeah. And then the hardest part was telling my parents, my Asian parents in Asia, who they left their son to go to the States by himself to go study. I'm just like, hey, I don't think I want to go to college anymore. And then my dad's like, what do you want to do? And I basically just made a list of all the things that I'd like to do. And I found that, I really like playing video games. So from there, I got an internship at a street marketing and a youth promotions company where they actually did a lot of stuff with video game companies. And just working with one of our clients, I came to the realization this is something that I really want to do. So right afterwards, I got a job with Activision as a QA tester. And I worked my way up within the next couple months to become a project lead to floor manager. And then, while working at Activision, just doing QA testing, I realized, maybe this is the area of expertise I want to be in. So maybe I should go back to school. So went back to art school, got my degree in game art and design, and then got a couple of jobs here and there. And
then never drew again.
Never drew again. Yes. And here I am.
That's super similar to my story. I was in college, right? And I'm taking courses, and I took a Maya course, and we're animated, and I'm like, fuck this, I want to be an animator. So I went for 18 months to animation school, animated in a couple games, and then that was it. Bam, I was done animating because I found out that I like doing other things in the same industry.
Oh, definitely.
We're twins.
But at this, yes. Although you have an awesome beard, I wish I could have your beard.
It's like we were talking about. It's just from laziness. This is. It's God, it's a pain in the ass to shave again today. No, my wife likes it, so That's a perk.
And that's the important thing.
See, and that's one of the things. I mean, your story to get in, not the beard, because I'm with Indy. It's not born of anything other than sheer laziness. But I go and I'll talk to high school kids, or even like middle school kids, and their first thing when you walk in the room is like their eyes just kind of like blow up. It's like, oh my God, he works in video games. That's the coolest thing ever. And you have to temper that with, it's still a job. It's not like we're sitting around and playing Fortnite all day long, at least unless you're Ninja.
I have a story about that, actually. I went to speak for career day for a school, and I spoke to 2 different classrooms, and the first question in the first group was, do you play PUBG or Fortnite? The second question in the second group was, do you play Fortnite or do you like Fortnite? Something along those lines. And it was pretty funny. They're all, maybe 3rd graders. And, the one thing I wanted to get across was, people, they're like, I want to get into games. I want to get into the game industry. I want to make a game. It's like, well, there's a lot of parts to making a game. And, you can be a writer, you can be an artist, you can be a programmer, you can be just all variety of things that you could do even for other industries that you can do for games. And so, I try to encourage them, think about what kinds of things you want to do. Do you want to draw? Do you want to, create the stories? And hopefully I got to them, but I kept just getting interrupted with Fortnite questions. So I don't know, maybe not.
You just say, let me call up Ninja and ask him.
Yes. I always like to throw down I know people that work at Epic, and I told one of my son's friends, it was a threat like over Halloween when they were all together and having fun and wired up on sugar. I was like, I'll call my friends at Epic and they'll take away your glider, and so every time you jump out of the plane, you're just gonna splat, and that's gonna be it. And he was like, his eyes got big. He was mortally terrified at that point. I'm like, that would be such a good thing to be able to say, all right, you can play Fortnite, but you don't get a glider. Go ahead, run and jump. But
jump on someone else's glider.
Exactly. You better hold on to somebody's leg while they're going down, because that's your only chance. I'll tell the teachers before I get in there, and I'm like, don't look to me to be the person that's going to tell these kids to go to college, because they can. It's not going to hurt them, but our industry is still a point where it's like your portfolio and your experience matters a lot more than the degree that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people that all the time. If a 16-year-old or 18-year-old, I guess they need to be legal to hire, but comes at me with an incredible portfolio and they've never done any formal schooling or anything like that, I would hire them over someone that just got a 4-year degree that wasn't as good, because it's all about, the quality of work, the passion of the person that you're hiring. It really is an interesting industry. I mean, I know a couple programmers that they learned fully just from YouTube videos, so
yeah,
it can be done.
And then it is funny, because when you can go in and say, you can't do everything yourself, and so, well, except for Eric Barron and Stardew Valley. I mean, yeah, he pretty much did that one all by himself, but he still needed help to publish it outside of where he published it himself. So it's always fun. I like to hear how everybody got in the industry, because none of us follow a normal career path to get here. So let's start with, we're talking about how to market your Switch games. How many of you all, what have you launched so far on Switch, and how far back does that go?
They were all this last year. They're all 2018. We did Chicken Assassin first as kind of a test run to see, to understand the process. And actually, I guess we've done 4 games now. We did Chicken Assassin. We did Whispering Willows, which of course is on everything, so why not bring it to Switch as well. But that was a good, flexing our knowledge that we had from Chicken Assassin. We then could apply it to Whispering Willows, a title that we knew had done well on other platforms. recently in December we launched Desert Child, which was a sim launch across all platforms, and Switch was one of the platforms that it launched on. And then we also helped Adult Swim and Video Cult with Rain World, and so we did the ports for Rain World. That was
Nice.
all last year.
All right, so that brought up a question in my mind immediately. When you've got a game that you use first called Chicken Assassin, and then you have, Whispering Willows, is there a difference in the way that you attack the marketing based on the genre?
Yeah. Yunsung, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh yes, definitely. Obviously there are two different types of games. Chicken Assassin is kind of a clicker kind of RPG, whereas Whispering Willows is 2D kind of platform puzzle solving kind of. I want to say a horror, but it's kind of like a psychological kind of horror kind of game kind of deal. And so obviously there's two different audiences that you're reaching out to. So for us, we'd be able, like, obviously for Chicken Assassin, we try to kind of target the type of media and influencers that would readily play these type of the games, whereas you don't, like, some people might be able to play both type of games, but for us we just want to make sure that the media outlet or the influencer that is playing our game has fun playing our games, has a history of playing those type of games. So we make those type of assessments early on before we actually do a lot of the outreach.
So what do you use to identify and reach out to influencers?
A lot of the times we have our influencer outreach manager, Richard Suchit, who goes by Animated Break, who's also a partner streamer. So that definitely helps out too. He's able to actually, within his network, identify a couple people that he knows directly that he can actually kind of recommend to us that we can actually reach out to. And a lot of the times we would actually talk with these influencers and ask them, like, hey, do you know anyone else who might be interested in something like this? Would your group be interested in something like this? And then so on, we basically kind of formulate a list and kind of keep tabs of all the people that we've worked with, people that we want to work with in the future, and then we basically kind of make a list of all the type of games and genres that they're interested in to do.
We also just started something on our website that's kind of an influencer form. So any future influencers that want to go through us, we just have kind of a short questionnaire that helps really categorize them and group them into appropriate areas so that we can kind of retarget them in the future, whether that's platforms they play, genres they like, and other things like that. So we're trying to get as much, as many details as possible on the different influencers and that we're and press that we're working with, so that we can feed them, the kind of content they care about. Because the worst thing is, we do a decent amount of marketing campaigns, and we don't want to just spam every month the same people over and over and over, because that's going to have a low return. It's better to really focus on the people that will care about the different products that we have.
So what
Do
I
you
hear you
have
guys
a
saying
link
is
to
that
that?
it's important to have a partnered Twitch streamer on your staff, right?
Andy, remind me to find one of those. I'm sitting here. If you're
definitely helps.
wondering why I keep looking off to the side, it's like I am literally waiting to lose my internet connection because the wires get flipped outside the
my
pole
gosh.
over there. I told the guys,
if you disappear, we
we've
won't.
got like 30 mile an hour, 40 mile an hour winds going on right now. So yeah, I may be here in 5 minutes. I may not. If you want to post that link to the chat for the streamers to go sign up, that's perfectly fine. And we can do that. So, but you don't use anything along the lines of Keymailer or Woovit. It's all internal.
Well, we do use Keymailer, Woovit, and we actually utilize another service called indieboost.io. But we basically, like, those we use as like supplemental to the main ways we can actually track those things, because even though those services are very good and efficient at what they're doing, they don't 100% do everything that you want to do.
Yeah.
So just to make sure that we cover all our bases, and more importantly, like, when you're doing outreach, you don't want to necessarily kind of like rely just on those type of software to be able to ensure that they get it to the right people. So a lot of the times for us, if we want to get games out to specific people, we want to go with a personal route and hit up the respective journalist or influencer uh, in that field via email or something. A lot of the times, like through conventions or any kind of ways we can actually kind of directly communicate with them.
Which goes back to your question about hiring an influencer to work on our team. It's important to us that we have those relationships, and kind of each person on our marketing team in particular has different relationships, and it sort of covers a different area. Yoon Sung has a lot of relationships with press. um, Richard has a lot of relationships with influencers. I have a lot more of the business relationships and like partnerships. So kind of between each of us, we cover a different area and can bring different, relationships to the table. But in our opinion, having those not only relationships but friendships with a lot of these people, that's what really helps. And we rather really cultivate those friendships and those relationships, with those kinds of people, um, because ultimately it goes a lot farther than just having thousands of contacts that you don't really know very well.
Spam. Like if you've been doing BD in the industry for 20 years and you have this gigantic, massive database. So I just went over and flipped through to the sign up sheet. Are you seeing a lot of traction with caffeine? Because I know that's one of the newer ones that's out there right now.
Well, they are a startup. They actually started, I think last year or 2 years ago, but they did recently got a lot of funding too. But for us, we're always looking into like emerging platforms, new platforms that could be potentially innovative. And we also want to ensure that we can get our message across to many different people too. So for us, like we always looking into new technologies to kind of see how we can implement them, how we can actually utilize them within our company to bring about the best results possible.
It's and it also goes back to what we were just talking about with career paths. Now there's a viable career path where you play games, then you start streaming games, and then you get a real job like us, in games, because you've been streaming games. So it's, again, all the things that you can't go to college to learn that are actually really, really important in our world.
Oh, I agree. I mean, when to get your foot in the door, probably like I'm 18 years into this business now this year. So like when I first got my foot in the door, everyone's like, "Oh, QA tester," and that's basically the way. That's how I actually came up. But like these days, that's not necessarily the most viable route anymore because it's like everyone knows the secret now. So it's really important. Excuse me for just a minute. Sorry.
He got a beard hair in his mouth.
I apologize. I meant to mute that. I have a cold right now.
That's okay.
But like now, kids nowadays, like it's becoming an influencer, becoming a streamer, being able to actually like play the game. That's actually a more viable way to be able to actually get your foot in the door. Obviously, traditional methods like going through school and learning how to do a lot of the different kind of trades definitely helps out too, for sure. But at the same time, like I found that like if you definitely want to get your foot in the door, Twitch is probably one of the streaming is probably one of the better ways to get into the industry.
And even that's coming full circle. We're actually working with a couple of influencers right now, or having conversations around creating games for them. So it's kind of crazy. Starts as just streamers, and now they're becoming content creators. Well, I mean, always content creators, but creators of the content that they're playing as well.
But as as streamers, I mean, as it gets, because there was last year 3 million active broadcasters on Twitch. As it gets more and more saturated, it's a good idea for people to go to school, to take communications, to take art, to learn about motion graphics design, to learn about broadcasting, to learn about debating. It would be a good idea to take all of those kind of courses to get into streaming. Which of course opens up. I mean, that's what opened up the door for me to get into a lot of other things. Oh,
yeah. I mean, you're selling yourself essentially. You're a business that you're trying to run your own brand.
It's when I was in college, I have a English literature degree for all the good in the world that does. I've proven that I can read. And I have friends of mine that got communication degrees, and we were also always joke back and forth about how communication was just a communication degree was a little better than an English degree, but at the great scheme of things, it was all kind of, and now that's exactly what it is, because you're right. I mean, Indy, there's a lot of things that, you need in order to be successful streaming that you actually can pull from traditional, college, university, schools, classes, all that kind of good stuff. So, what I got, Ace Platinum says the guy with the long beard is Lancelot, the guy in the middle is Cody, and the other guy with the headwear is Shane.
You're Shane.
That's guesses at our names.
Lancelot, Cody, and Shane.
I'm David.
Our names
Or
are
Cody.
right here.
Can I be Chaz?
You can be Chaz.
Thank
Well,
you.
my Twitch just crashed. So, all right, getting back to Switch, as opposed to the, how to get in the industry side of, sidetrack we got on there. So, can you walk us through your typical marketing plan with as much detail as you are comfortable giving when it comes to a Switch title? Where does it? How far out do you start, and what steps do you take place? Do you do going all the way through it?
I think first, Yunsung, maybe just probably like a general outline of just what we do for any campaign, and then we can highlight stuff that we do differently for Switch.
Yes, that works.
For the most part, we basically take a look at the game and assess the game in itself, whether or not we like what things are good, what things we can push, what things that we can highlight, and basically we kind of break the game down as much as possible. Then afterward,
it's good to kind of find like several hooks of the game. What are different angles that we can take with press and with media and stuff like that.
yes, for sure. And then afterwards, it really comes down to kind of figuring out a timeline. So based on when the client or whoever wants to actually try to publish the game on Switch and stuff like that, we kind of take a look at what dates make sense in terms of like releasing, and then basically kind of moving backwards from there to kind of figure out like dates where we want to set for like launch, like announcements, launch dates, like conventions and shows and events and things like that. It's important for us to kind of start to kind of formulate these milestones ahead of time so that we can have set dates that we can kind of look forward to. And then once you have all those set dates and set forth, that we can actually start planning out our social media and kind of community management plan. And then afterwards, once all that kind of is put into place, then we are able to actually kind of assess what type of media and influencers that we want to do outreach to, what guys we want to work with closely to maybe potentially give like a preview, to maybe give something exclusive to where they can actually showcase the game a little bit earlier, something a little bit more enticing, so that like they'd be more willing to be able to showcase the game, whereas competing against everyone else trying to do the same thing too. So you want to be able to give the influencers something a little bit more different and unique to make the experience a little bit more better.
Our general strategy is we start with kind of a structure that we have that we use for each campaign, but then we break the structure. We start off like these are the pieces for the campaign that we want to do. We know we want press outreach, we know we want influencer outreach, we know we want social media, we know we want community management, we need events, and then we kind of push that further, and we think, what are interesting ways tailored to this specific game that can get it extra exposure? And that really can be across anything. That can be publicity stunts for the game that just are for Desert Child. We built an arcade machine and we brought that to E3, and we had it in the arcade machine, and that was a great way to get exposure at the convention, because people are walking around, and especially in the IndieCade booth, there's just a lot of T-beats and controllers, and so the arcade machine really stood out as something people wanted to see. For Star Vikings, we actually had a couple huge Norwegian guys dressed up as Vikings with space visors on and stuff like that, walking around the show floor. And each campaign, it's like looking at what are some of the like over the top things that we can do to really bring the attention to it with the foundation of stuff that we know works essentially.
And
And
speaking of Desert Child, if you we've got 5 copies of it to give away. So just type !raffle and get in there. And by the end of the show, we'll divvy all of those out. All right. So in terms of, all right, so we went through high level marketing. Did we go through what is done differently? I mean, are there specific places that you target for Switch that you don't normally look at for PC?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of like, Nintendo centric sites that available that like, out there. Of course, like, you want to try to target the ones that will give you the most traction in terms of like news and publicity. So you always best to kind of take a look at that Metacritic list and be able to kind of figure out exactly which publications actually have that type of accreditation. So you want to try to kind of send um, outreach emails to them. I'll reach out to them too as well. But more importantly, like for us, what we tend to do usually is usually we have a set group of people we usually target when it comes down to Nintendo, and it usually comes down to us just being able to like work with people or people who've actually written articles with us in the past, people that we've met at conventions, and so we continually build up this network that we have, so to the point where whenever we're releasing a game, we don't necessarily have to do as much research anymore in terms of trying to figure out who the best people to kind of do the outreaches out to. But
Nintendo in particular, they have a lot of just Nintendo only websites. I think more than any other, compared to Sony, compared to Microsoft or Xbox, or even I guess there's a lot of like PC sites, but just a ton of like Nintendo news, Nintendo Switch news, just especially when Switch became even more popular, a bunch of these emerged. So even when we're now launching games, sim launching across all platforms, like a third of our press or even half of our press is like from Nintendo specific sites that are only covering this Switch stuff. When we're doing sales, a ton of Nintendo sites will pick up even on the sales that we're doing on our Switch titles and write about it on like, games discounted this week. So I think leveraging those sites is one really powerful thing you can do, with a Nintendo Switch launch in particular, just because, yes, they only care about the one version of the game, but they're gonna definitely push it really hard.
And that's interesting. I mean, Nintendo's always had that kind of like passionate fan following, but I hadn't thought about going to Metacritic to actually figure out who's being the most active for, the Nintendo based article, the Nintendo reviews and articles and that sort of stuff. That's good insight right there. So, over the last, year and the 4 or 5 games that you've published, what have you found that really works, and what have you tried that just really didn't work at all?
Well, one thing working with Nintendo closely. For a lot of their marketing, so on their actual store page, it works similar to maybe how the Steam store does, where it's pretty algorithm based. They won't highlight your game and kind of curate it a lot of the times like you would find on like PlayStation or Xbox, but it's based on sales and performance, and also like when the game is going to come out and when it's going to launch. So we've found kind of need to, besides just the storefront itself, there's a lot of other things that you can leverage with Nintendo by working with their marketing team. And the best way really, we've actually started sending them like kind of formal proposals on our ideas, but we've learned kind of what they're looking for and what they're not looking for. And the biggest thing is they seem very into kind of video content, and so for each of our major trailers, we've been able to get it up on Nintendo's channels. Remember that they are Nintendo America, Nintendo Europe, Nintendo Japan, and Nintendo Asia. So there's 4 different regions that all function under the same umbrella, but they have different marketing teams and kind of different procedures to to get featured. So you can get rejected by one and you can still get accepted by another. You can have all of them push the same thing. They each have slightly different things that they'll push. So don't forget that there's these different entities that all have like different approval processes and different even just processes for submitting the material. But we usually start, the biggest thing, well, one thing that we saw didn't work was use your time wisely and give as much heads up as possible to, this goes for all, especially the console platform holders. Give them as much warning about your game coming up as possible. We
Agreed.
talking to Sony, they're like, why are you telling us 5 months until the game launches? You should have told us that this game you're working on it a year ago. So give them that like year heads up that like, this is a game coming down the pipeline. Every several months, follow up with them on progress. Be like, yep, we're still thinking about like a summer launch, because that way there's just a lot of early promotions and opportunities that you can take with them that you would not be able to otherwise. Maybe Nintendo wants to be the very first one to showcase your game at a convention. Well, we learned kind of the hard way that since our game had released, there needs to be something sexy about it, right? And our game had been in other conventions, and so instantly that wasn't as attractive to them. And we had been in just tiny conventions. Obviously getting featured by Nintendo at E3, would have been, or PAX, would have been huge, and that would have put a lot of eyeballs on. So consider your first unveiling, whether that's your first show that you go to, your first time you announce an announcement trailer or a press release.
Make
Put
it big.
behind someone. Make it big, but don't just do it across your social media channels. Look at how you can leverage it with the different platform holders, and Nintendo is no exception. You're thinking about doing your first convention. You're looking at a couple different conventions. You contact Nintendo and go, we have this game. Here's some, here's a build. Here's some gameplay footage of it. Are you guys going to either of these conventions? If so, are there any showcases that we can be a part of so that we can have the first unveiling with Nintendo? And if Nintendo says no, or they're not supporting it, then contact Sony, contact Microsoft, and do the same thing.
And you have to be careful. You can't go to all 3 of them and give them the same, because then if 2 of them do agree to do it, then what then what are you going to do? Because now you're going to piss off somebody, extreme, if not both of them. So
you have to be careful on I would say choosing sides is very important. You either have to go parity across the board, or you have to give one a lot of love. It's difficult to, as soon as you do some, you're going to do some Nintendo exclusive DLC, well, then Sony and Microsoft are going to be pissed, and they're not going to feature you as heavily. Nintendo will feature you, but the other 2 won't. So when you're releasing the game, especially on all consoles, luckily the consoles don't care about PC, they don't care about mobile, but the consoles do care about each other. And so you need to think about, is this game best suited for kind of a sim launch or sim, promotion, or is this game really Nintendo is our focus and we're going to be on other platforms, but we don't care as much how they do? And in that case, you might want to see if you can leverage stuff specifically with Nintendo. But as soon as you start favoring one, the other ones, it's going to be much harder to get stuff with them.
For a sim launch for us, for like Desert Child, what we did was we be able to actually find pieces of content that made sense for each of the respective consoles. So for example, like, for Sony, because like they do a lot of music and a lot of things are music based, we did a lot of promotions and a lot of efforts that kind of highlighted the soundtrack of Desert Child. Whereas for Nintendo, we basically mostly went the art angle or the animation angle and the inspiration as to like pixel art and the whole style of the game. And for Microsoft, we went a little bit more technical in terms of like developing for it, porting it over from from Game Maker all the way to an Xbox version. So like for us, we were able to actually kind of assess the project in itself, see what the strengths and weaknesses of our art of to offering it to each respective console, and then kind of determining what makes sense of the type of content that we want to offer to each of those consoles.
So for years and years and years and years and years, we always looked at Nintendo as the family friendly, the kid console. That has changed dramatically, with the Switch. Do you still see that there are certain genres that play better on the Switch than the Xbox and PS4, or vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, Chicken Assassin is a good example of one that I guess maybe a little bit better on Switch, but ultimately it came down to kind of having clicker mechanics, which is a kind of a PC or mobile focused mechanic. And so bringing that to consoles in general, we found, especially on like PS4, people weren't super receptive to it because it didn't feel like a console experience for them. So, kind of moving forward, we've really considered like, does this game, instead of just putting every game on every platform, does this game make sense for this platform? I think Nintendo still, multiplayer games are still very strong on Nintendo. The online support isn't as strong, and so but the local multiplayer is still a thing. Um, you know, with their games like Smash Brothers and Mario Party and Mario Kart, they're all very strong 4 or more player games. And so having a strong, kind of party game or multiplayer game, especially local, I think it goes really well on Nintendo. Um, they have, you need to think about the Switch's hardware. Two of the best features are, of course, that you can take it on the go with you. And so if you have any kind of technology or gameplay elements that can tie into having that, walking around with it, um, it has the touch screen on it, and so you can, anything or not, anything kind of like more touch related, or it has HD rumble, which is the best vibration out of all the controllers. Um,
And I still don't understand why they call it HD Rumble, but this is like
I, I think it's regular rumble is light to very intense, and with Nintendo's rumble, there's really a much wider range of vibrations. It you know
Hey, 4K Rumble coming soon.
But you can feel stuff bubbling up. You can feel stuff, uh, going from one side to the other side. You can feel it like if you're going like this with your console, you can feel like stuff rolling around inside. So there's a lot of advanced rumble features that you can take advantage of on their platform.
That's it. That was the one that I always use to show people when I'm trying to explain to people how much technology is packed into this little bitty Joy-Con. And they're like, "Well, why is this $60?" It's like, you will be amazed at what they shoved in here. One of the best examples I've seen is the 1-2 switch.
Yes.
That launch where it says, hold your Joy-Con in your hand and guess how many marbles will roll around in a box.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, it actually, but it's not high definition. It's ultra rumble, maybe. I don't know. Anyway. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It feels
it's crazy.
exactly like you have multiple marbles roll. I mean, and you can feel how many are in there. I mean, it's absolutely.
Yeah, it can simulate kind of liquids splashing around, like it's really insane. So When we're bringing a game, whether that's to Switch only or cross-platform, we are looking at what those features are and how we can enhance it. Not only because that creates the best experience, because that's also what their marketing team loves a lot. In this goes for any platform, any of the platform holders. If you can play to their hardware and give kind of enhancements that speak to their hardware, they love it because they're wanting to show it off, right? So Microsoft is all about the super high def, high resolution, high frame rates, having that game run super smoothly. You know, uh, when the PlayStation controllers first came out, it was like, how do you make use of the light bars on the front? We had Whispering Willows. When you got close to evil ghosts, it would glow red. When you got close to good ghosts, it would glow blue. Switch again is what we just talked about. So if you can play to those, then when you're proposing to Nintendo, hey, we want to do, uh, you know, we want to do a marketing campaign with you, they're gonna go, and then you use that as leverage. It goes a lot further.
So dual analogs, just asking chat, as a player who doesn't use Rumble, is it important to still have Rumble? And yes, it is for that very reason. That's part of what helps you get the platform holders' attention. And so, all right, my question from that, David, why does it matter what goes on the front of those light bars on the controller? You can't even see them.
Well, I don't know. Some marketing execs decided at Sony that it was important. So maybe if you're playing in the dark, then you can kind of see it in the dark a little bit better.
so
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But it is a major part if you want to be featured by a console.
I was muted. I muted
Yeah,
myself.
you're muted.
I was just doing this. That's all. I wasn't really talking.
If you do, whether it's mobile or console, PC, whatever, it doesn't matter unless you're doing like content just for one store. But that's the way that, David's right. That's the way you get their attention. That's the way you get those, good features, is by, playing to their strengths. There's a reason why when Apple does their big conference every year, whatever new technology they're announcing, is there's 5 games in the back stream behind them that already have that in there. That's exactly the reason why.
We have a big internal wiki that is basically for each platform holder that we work with. It's what can they provide and what are they looking for, because ultimately it's as you said, Switch is getting oversaturated. Steam is oversaturated. Mobile is oversaturated. I guess probably every store at this point is probably oversaturated.
Everything is oversaturated.
So how do you stand out? How do you get kind of that exposure, and understanding what each person is looking for is super important in that, because as much as you'd like to think it's just out of the kindness of their hearts, to push you, they ultimately they want, why does it matter to leverage Nintendo's technology? Because they want to show off games that take advantage of their platform. They don't want to show off a game that's launching across all platforms at the same time. They want to show off, they all want the first looks, right? They want, this is the first time the game's been shown off, or this game is leveraging Nintendo's HD Rumble, and now we can show this at an event, showing how like the 1-2 Switch, that was made by Nintendo, but if that was made by a third-party developer, like, they would have loved that, right? Because that's a perfect example of taking advantage of their own technology. And
They're selling a tech demo.
Exactly. Yeah. So but that's what shows, at like conventions and stuff. If you have that game and people are like, what does the Switch do, and you pull up that game, that's going to show very well what it does. So
And why
anything that
the
helps them
controllers
sell
cost
their
$60.
consoles. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's cool.
So
So-
I have kind of just other marketing Nintendo stuff that we did that I can talk about.
Go shoot.
Do it.
Cool. So I'm going to kind of just go through a list here. So one thing that's interesting is Nintendo has on-device blogs, basically. It's called the News Channel, and you should definitely take advantage of the News Channel. You should take advantage of it just so everyone that buys your game, almost like on Steam, they get the news. They automatically are subscribed to your game's channel, and so in their news feed, if you push any updates, it's automatically going to go out to those people. Now, other people that don't own the game can also subscribe to your channel and see those updates, but that makes it important to use that as much as possible. Every new patch, every new content update, every time you just have something you want to share, push that out, because that's going to go out to all those people. Now you can also take advantage of, Nintendo has other news channels. They have an indie channel. They just have the regular Nintendo news. They have several kind of curated major channels that they run themselves, and those are the ones that you talk with Nintendo and you bring them the story, like Yoon-sung was talking about earlier. Bring them. What was the one that we did for Desert Child on Switch?
We basically did art and influence of the game.
Yeah, and so we put that up, and it actually just went live in January. But that got featured on their like main indie channel, and so anyone that's subscribed to that indie channel gets that news coming up on their channel. Other stuff is, as I mentioned before, all these channels have, especially for consoles, they all have YouTube channels, and you can actually get every trailer that you have, if it's good enough, featured on these different YouTube channels. So when we have a new trailer, we take it, and again, there's different regions. So we take it to Microsoft, we take it to Sony America, Sony Europe, Sony Japan, Sony Asia, Nintendo America, Nintendo Europe, Nintendo Japan, because all of them have the chance of putting that up on their channel. And some of the smaller ones, maybe only get 2,000-3,000 views, but some of the major, like, Nintendo America, Nintendo Japan, you can get 50, 100K, views on those, and very high engagement, lots of comments. On the Desert Child trailers, we got like 300, 400, 500 comments on some of those videos. So just a really great extra piece to like amplify your trailer. And they'll post it the same day that you post it on your channel, because it's just more content for them to post.
So what kind of content do you use, or that have you seen as the most effective when you're looking at a channel that is aimed at somebody that already owns the game? In terms of, I can see how you're going to build retention that way, and maybe sell DLC or in-app purchases or things. But when you're talking about the channel that, this person already owns your game. So what type of stuff, have you seen perform the best there?
I would say definitely like content update stuff, where you're actually have added new things to the game that they can get excited about, that they can, stuff that'll make them revisit the game, right? Because, say a game like Desert Child, it has, 4 or 5 hours of gameplay. You play it, you're probably going to move on to the next title, right? But you stay subscribed to Desert Child. So if in 2-3 months from now, we release a content update that has a bunch more, races or maps or customization or whatever, and we put that in an update, that's going to bring back a lot of those existing players to come check out the game again.
You also want to, just to add to that, you also want to kind of figure out ways you can keep your users engaged. More importantly, like, how can you actually extend the shelf life of the game? How can you actually continue to have these guys want to come back and play the game for more? So, specifically, you can look into things like maybe having just contests or little community little events that you can set up on your Discord that could potentially kind of springboard some of these things to bring back new life into the game as well too. So those are some of the things that we also look into to try to figure out how we can get people to continue playing the game, to come back and revisit the game, or want to just participate after, like, maybe beating the game.
And
So talk for a second about why is it important that people continue to play the game after they've already beaten it? Why is it important to get them to keep coming back and doing it again?
Across all these platforms, friends. when you're playing a game on Switch or Steam or Xbox or PlayStation, it says David is playing Desert Child. I have a huge friends list. All of those friends are seeing it, especially with something like Steam. I mean, even on Switch, when I boot up the game, a notification will even come up sometimes for the friends. David is now playing Desert Child. Every single day when I'm playing that game, David is now playing Desert Child. David is now playing Desert Child. David is now playing Desert Child. That has an impression on people, and they go, "What is Desert Child? Like, I need to check this out." They're going to get curious. They're going to click through the store page, and they're going to check it out. So friends is the biggest way to why you want your existing players to keep playing again.
David is playing his own damn games again. David is playing his own.
Well, it was funny. I had someone hit me up on Steam yesterday, and it really was. I've been meaning to check out Desert Child. That game looks pretty cool. And they hadn't realized that they had added me. They had added me because they liked Akupara Games, but they had forgotten that I was a developer for Akupara Games. And so it really was. I was like, oh, and I felt bad because I was like booting it up like over and over and over because I was testing this one thing to make sure if it worked. So I had to keep restarting something. So it probably came up like 5 times in a row. Like, David is playing Desert Child. And after like the 3rd time, they messaged me and they're like, I've been really meaning to check out that
What
game.
the
And I'm like,
are you doing? Does the game crash that often? Is that...
I'm like, sorry, I had to keep replaying this mission.
And there you get a little insight into the glorious world of QA, where, and in a small company where even the CEO is doing QA. So, that's our world. That's what we do. So, I mean, is there, all right, so the other question that comes out of the channels, and I know, I ask these questions, but I know the channels are effective because my 7-year-old comes, do you know that there's a new blah 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 for certain game? And I'm like, no, how do you know that? And it's like, well, I was watching the channel. So can you cross market? Can you cross market your other games through, like the Desert Child?
We do. We recently for Desert Child, we actually on Steam, we posted to Whispering Willows is Steam discussions that Desert Child had released, and it was just, here is our next game, check it out. I don't know how frowned upon it is, and I don't know, I you probably don't want to spam it too much, but I think to some degree it is good because your fans of your existing games are going to want to probably check out your next games that are coming out. So it's a nice way to, hey, here's our next project. And you could do that through Nintendo's news. You could do that through, Steam's updates, anything like that.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering, if Nintendo, lets you do that, or if it was, very, very heavily frowned upon to be using one game's channel to promote another game.
We haven't tried on Nintendo, and they would maybe actually reject it. So I guess we'll say up in the air until we test it out. But Nintendo does actually have a review process for the news that you put out. So whereas Steam, you can kind of just post whatever you want. Nintendo, you do have to get approval. So
how long does the review process take for news?
Pretty quick on news. I would say within 24 hours, they generally will approve it. But yeah, sometimes it's been a little over that. But that's quick compared to some of the approval processes for Nintendo and these other places, which I think is actually something Yunsung wanted to talk about. Just going back to making sure you have enough time, even going down to like trailers. Some of those processes can take a long time. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. For example, like the YouTube submission process, you would think like, oh, I just submit one trailer and basically put one piece of metadata and that everything is okay. But it's two kind of separate processes in the fact that you initially have to just submit the trailer first onto their site. And then afterwards there's like a separate form or a document that you have to fill out. And what we found is that even though we're submitting the same video, we have to do three different like metadata certification processes because there's certain like language, certain things, certain format that each of the respective channels follow that you have to kind of like follow with. So it's important. Like you definitely want to devote some time and basically have a little bit of buffer time too, because what happens is if they reject your video or your metadata, it could take a couple days again for you to do a resubmit again for them to kind of take
or even a week in some cases.
in a week. And if you're basically waiting to the last moment to do some of these things, you could definitely miss a lot of your deadlines if you don't kind of plan ahead, because you think, oh, I'm just gonna submit this piece of cake and and everything is done and put a pin in it. But in a lot of the cases, like they'll come back like, oh, there was a guy in this one image in this video that we would like you to take out. That means you gotta go to your video editor or whoever it is that made the trailer, and you have to make 3 different versions of the video again, and then you have to, so it's really important to basically take a look at the guidelines that they have, that they give to you, and make sure you have enough time to where you can also kind of have enough time to submit the trailer or the information so that you be able to hit all the important deadlines that you set forth.
We for Desert Child, for like our launch trailer, we had 18 different versions of the trailer that we had to put out.
Jeez.
Just because like Sony America, Sony Europe, Sony Japan, like all those regions that I said, plus like just a general YouTube one, plus like, oh, here's one that we need because they let's see, they have different YouTube requirements for like Sony Japan or Nintendo America's like YouTube versus their store page. There's different requirements. So it's a lot of things to track. And plus like even just getting like one of those trailers approved the first time we did it, like we probably, not for Desert Child, but for something like Chicken Assassin, like got the trailer rejected by Nintendo like 3 times in a row. So we've now learned, and really that was just our bad for not reading the documentation close enough. But even if you do, there's still just so many little things, like everything from like the frame rate to the like audio bit depth, just everything has to be exactly to their specs, or else they're going to reject it. Or even something you're not thinking, like we did like a fade in on the logo, on the Nintendo logo on the end screen for our launch trailer, and they can, one of Nintendo's rules is there can never be any transparency or distortion to their logo. Has to just come in, has to just appear clean and to the full extent. So they rejected us for that. We could probably list off 20 things we've been rejected for now, and some of them we felt are silly, but that's their specs, and that's how they get, especially Nintendo, who's, they're about kind of that consistency and that quality level. And you could argue that there's some shovelware on their platforms now, but it still has to go through so much QA and checks, and whereas like mobile, you can just release a game with barely getting checked for anything. Consoles, there's like over 100 things that they check for, and test for to approve you, basically.
Nintendo lot check has never been has never been an easy process. Oh, our camera's got all sideways there.
There we go. So the takeaway from that is make sure and pay attention to all of the documents before you submit stuff.
Also for Nintendo Japan.
Oh, you're muted now, David.
Oh, I'm back.
There we go.
All right. Oh yeah. Also for Nintendo Japan, you might want to actually have a native speaker or a translator, because most of their our communication with them has been in Japanese. So we basically had to have one of our employees who actually was a native speaker as well to basically translate all the stuff that we want to in terms of like the metadata and outreach and things like that. So like those are some of the things, like, because you would think, oh man, their Nintendo would just send an email in English. Nah, it's not like
Nah.
that.
That's the same for Sony Japan as well. Sony Japan and Nintendo Japan, you have to communicate in Japanese, and all their forms and all that stuff is all Japanese too.
Yeah, and trust me when I say this, Google Translate will not help you out with this one. Like, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but there's like 3 different kind of like character types that you can use in Japanese. And so for if you're not familiar with the Japanese language, like you can basically type up some really weird stuff by accident using Google Translate. So it's really recommended that you actually have either someone who can speak Japanese and read Japanese, prove it for you, or write it for you, or maybe even just go to a professional service or even like a localization service to kind of see if they can actually assist you with some of those numbers.
We're big fans of using professionals for localization. For Whispering Willows, it was a crowdsourced, and it was great because it was free, right? But there are just so many issues kind of came from it. But moving forward, we've done, all of our store descriptions, of course, the copying games, for press releases, for just, for trailers. If we're going to localize it, we have a professional do it, and it's worth the cost. The only thing I don't probably is support emails. And the other day I Google because there's just so many different people who speak so many different languages. And someone wrote to me and I just used Google Translate to interpret and then respond. And they go, "Oh, you speak English?" Because my Google Translate was so poor. And they go, "Okay, well, I'll just continue in English then."
We're American. Don't you realize that we don't learn 5 languages like everyone else in the world does?
Yeah.
So, and one thing I want everyone to take away from this isn't just the tips and the advice here is this is a lot of work. This isn't something that you want to, if you're going to do the marketing part of your game well, it's not something that you can do just handing it off to, somebody else on the team to do some of the time. I mean, look at, if you're making 18 versions of a trailer and if you're having to give, a lot of these heads ups and lot checks and weeks in advance and do recuts and all this other stuff, it's a lot of work. This is why companies, need to have a full-time marketing person or communication, director, whatever the title is. The industry is growing and growing. And yeah, you used to be able to do this with a 5-man team and everybody wearing a whole lot of different hats, but it's complex out there now. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, we have 3 dedicated marketing people. We have JR, who does social and community management. So she runs all of our social pages. She does a lot of the engagement on, like Steam forums and social pages and our game groups and stuff like that. We have Yoon Sung, who's our CMO. So he runs a lot of kind of the marketing strategy and sets up kind of our campaign plans and guides everything, and also does a lot of the press outreach. And then we have Richard, who does kind of our influencer outreach and our influencer relationships. So
Yeah, totally. And just to add to what Jay was saying too, and I think this is something that definitely needs to be said, and I wish we could just holler it off of the mountaintops, but like, don't start your marketing campaign like 2 weeks before you're about to launch, or don't reach out to like I don't really, I'm not trying to throw anyone on the bus or anything like that, but like we have gotten a couple clients who literally come up to me and goes, "Oh, we want to launch the game in 2 weeks. What do you
Yes,
guys can do for what can you guys do for us?" And we're like,
I hear
almost
that
not
constantly. Yeah.
almost, yeah, exactly. And like you wanna like if this is a game that you're putting all your time and your energy into, then you want to be able to actually make sure that you devote enough time and you have enough time to be able to set up your entire marketing plan. And then I think usually like about 2 months before your launch is probably a good minimum, maybe 2 to 3 months. But like the earlier
and
you
if you haven't
start,
done it before, maybe even
yeah,
more, so you can learn the ropes. But if you know what you're doing, two
yeah.
to three months is good for indie games generally.
Yeah, and and basically when you start your dev process is probably this time you actually want to start having a social media a presence. You don't want to actually start up a Twitter right after, oh, I just got my beta out, or I just got to the point where we're at a point we can actually put out a demo. You want to actually start creating that social media presence early on, so that when it comes time to actually make like certain key announcements, you actually have little bit of a fan base, a lot more followers to be able to project your message. Otherwise, if you're just starting from ground zero when you're like, oh, we're making a game, like you're not necessarily going to get a lot of traction or a lot of eyeballs looking at what you're trying to do.
So Dual Analogs had two questions.
Sure.
One, going back to the three different characters in Japanese, is the same true for the Chinese market in terms of wanting to have somebody who is a native speaker on board?
Chinese market is a little bit different. Obviously, like like character language writing wise, it's all the same, but there's many different dialects. Obviously there's Cantonese and Mandarin depending upon where you are in China and stuff like that too. But it's good to have someone that you have who is versed in those type of things. But at the same time, like if you're not necessarily targeting the Chinese market, then I wouldn't necessarily say you would need that person unless you want some of that Chinese the market share in China. But even still, the market to enter into in China, it's also difficult too. There's a lot of red tape that you have to go through. But so I guess what, I guess if you are looking into making that foray into the Chinese market, I would say it would be important to actually have someone not only who knows the language and knows how to like converse and communicate with different dialects, but someone who's a little bit adverse, like who understands the industry a little. You don't want to bring someone in who's just a strictly translator, because the type of words that you use in gaming business don't necessarily translate well when you actually try to do Chinese business language.
And so, two things as well on China, they have now reopened applications to release new games. So, but you're still, if you just apply to one now, you're probably looking at months before you get greenlit on it. And two, the Switch, they don't sell the Switch in China yet.
Yes.
And there's no certainty they ever will. But it's my advice, if you're an indie developer wanting to hit China, is that you actually find a publisher who has launched games in China, because it's a different beast in and of itself.
Yeah, even the kinds of content they censor, or that does well, it's a totally different way of marketing your game.
And obviously you can't use Google, YouTube, Facebook, a lot of the different traditional means you able to use in like marketing here, as especially in the rest of the world. So just to double down on
Yep.
Dave's sentiment. Yeah.
All right. So, and then Dual Analogs ask, so when should you reach out to a publisher? 6 months ahead? What's the best time for somebody to send you all games that they want help publishing?
I saw your response, which is having a playable build, and I actually think that's pretty accurate. When people reach out to us for publishing consideration, I like to see three things. I like to see a build that they have of the game that I can play, a video because I don't have time to play every single build, and even just a couple minutes of gameplay or a trailer or something to give me an idea of what the game is very quickly, and then a pitch deck that essentially has, this is where the game is, this is where the game is going. So seeing like, okay, if the game is 30% done, what does 100% done look like? Just bullet points and concept art even. And then this is what I need from a publisher. I need this amount of money. I need this kind of support. I need someone to do porting, stuff like that. That's usually what I like to see. So it's as soon as you can get that ready. If that's, I would say generally the point where I would consider going to a publisher would be once you finish the MVP. You wanna have that 10-minute or 15-minute slice of your game that's at the highest fidelity possible. It's much better to have a short, because a publisher is not going to spend more than 10 or 15 minutes with it anyways. It's better to have kind of a short and very high quality. The audio you're going to have in the final game, the art you're going to have in the final game, the writing you're going to have in the final game, the design in a segment versus having a 5-hour game that's just gray boxes and no sound and nothing to it.
Yeah,
Vertical slice.
The vertical slice is key. I mean, you have to have one now.
There he
There's
goes again.
option to. Do we lose David again?
Mhm.
There's no option not to go and send a playable build to a publisher. All right,
Totally.
so
And then also in our cases too, when we actually kind of assess the games, we also give our feedback as to some of the things that we were looking into that like, here are some things that we're looking for, some of the bullet points that we're looking for. Perhaps maybe can you include some of these things in your game? Here are some things that we think might help out your game in terms of like, you know, for influencers and things like that. So we sometimes give like suggestions and little critiques that, you know, when we actually speak with, you know, people who are looking potentially for publishing, to like not only to ensure that like they walk away knowing that like we may or may not work with these guys, but at least these guys are actually giving us constructive criticism to helping us trying to make a better game. And that's what we're always trying to do.
that's awesome. And you are definitely, as a publisher, in the minority of companies that do that.
Helpfulness.
Usually it's,
Mhm.
you know, yes, no, if you get anything at all, you know, because I mean, part of the reason is publishers see so many games now. And, you know, when you were talking about they spend 10 or 15 minutes in a game, I started laughing because I remember, you know, 15 years ago when we were doing evals for games that we were going to represent, you know, we made it mandatory for our evaluators or reviewers internally to play the game for at least an hour. There's no way you could do that now. You know, there's just too much stuff coming in all the time, and
Sure.
you've got to make sure you put your best foot forward, you know, from day one. So
Yeah, it's almost like I think of it as like applying to a job, right? Like, what is your portfolio? What is your resume? What's like one paragraph about yourself? You know, you want to be just the best first impression possible. Maybe they'll look at all three. Maybe they'll just read the paragraph. Maybe they'll just look at your portfolio. But you want all of it to just be like straight to the point. This is who I am. This is what I want, because it's the same thing for jobs. Like, we'll get hundreds of applicants for a job, and how do you go through them all in detail?
So I just posted in chat the infographic that we made a year or so ago about our recommendations for what you should minimally have as a developer into a pitch deck. So you can catch that right there. All right. So what have we missed? Is there anything that, you know, we didn't talk about that we need to talk about, because we're coming up on the end of our time here? What else is out there right now, or did we hit everything?
I would say one other thing I want to discuss is, and this goes for every platform where you're releasing a game, getting preview pages up as soon as you do your announcement is really big. You know, for Steam, for example, you get wish lists as soon as your game is up. People can essentially follow your game, and when the game releases, you get notified. For for Switch and for some of these other ones, they have similar stuff set up in place. So getting that store page up is just extra exposure. It's a place that you can direct people to when you're talking about the game for a certain platform, even before it's released. It's just kind of a good landing page when talking about the game.
Cool.
So,
And
does Switch have wish lists now?
I think you can. I,
yes, you can favorite, I think, the
you
page
can
now
favorite, yeah.
Okay. Now, is that only through the console, or is that on the web as well?
on the web as well too.
What's it? Send me that link, or post that link in there, because I hadn't seen that yet.
Let me see for a minute.
Little known fact, I do these interviews, so I learn stuff too.
I have to enter my birthday for Desert Child.
But so
Yeah.
what was the? So I cut you off there, Yun Song. What were you going to add to that?
Well, I was basically going to say ask. That's the one thing that I think people a lot are afraid of to do, is just ask. Like when you actually have communication with someone at Nintendo, you know, in an email or whatever, is ask what other promotions are available. is there something coming down the pipeline? Is there anything that we can possibly do to possibly be a part of that? Like they like with Nintendo, they have so many things like David mentioned with the YouTube, with the eShop promotions, with the little blogs, but like they also have like an email newsletter too, and that actually reaches like several thousands to I would say probably a couple million people just through that newsletter service as well. But like a lot of people, they seem like, oh, I don't want to overstep my bounds or anything like that. Just respectfully, just like ask them. You'd be surprised at some of the things that get offered our way just by asking, simply asking. And
Yeah, we're very proactive in that we try to dig out all of the potential angles, and we've been applauded by some of the distributors. They're like, wow, people don't normally ask us these kinds of things, but it's or like, we've never done this before, but let's check, let's see if that's possible. So if you kind of think outside the box and just go big and come in with everything, it's interesting some of the doors that can open up.
for sure. And
Again,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just saying communication again is key.
Oh, definitely. And another thing that I actually want to tell a lot of the indie developers too is save everything. And what I mean save everything is if you have concept art, if you have videos of you guys like, rigging something or animating something, save everything. Like save the video footage of it, save the behind the scenes footage. If you have a great artist who's really great at drawing, sketching environments or characters, use OBS, use a screen capture, or basically capture that video. You really never know exactly when you're going to need that content, but if you have that content readily available, then it allows you to be able to pitch a lot of different ideas to Nintendo that you wouldn't necessarily might have had if you didn't actually save a lot of that content. And then also, by doing some of these things too, it also allows you to be able to actually kind of help your studio shine a little bit more by showing a little bit of personality, being able to show like a human face, or kind of like, show people that there's actually people behind this project too. So there's a lot of elements that I feel that you could definitely create content for, definitely things that you could pitch Nintendo to, but it's important to save every single thing that you have and make sure that everything is labeled, everything is kind of organized correctly, so that like if and when a time comes, you can just be like, oh, I've got this concept art here and this, soundtrack here, and I've also got a video of our artist drawing all the characters, and that we can edit out. And then you can pitch something like that to Nintendo, and they'll be like, oh, great, we'll put it up on our blog, and it'll be like the behind the scenes things. That so raises the profile for your studio, basically raises the profile for your game, definitely brings awareness to everything, and those are the type of things that you kind of want to kind of look into when you're saving this stuff too.
That Jessica just chimed in to, agree wholeheartedly with you that concept art is the best social media content.
Yes.
So have you looked, along those lines? What about streaming as the developer? That you're building that content, you're getting out there and engaging as fans. Have you all looked at using things like
So
Twitch and YouTube
we
as
we actually just hit Twitch affiliate on our company account, because we were streaming so much, especially around like Desert Child's launch. So that was never something we were trying to hit, but it was just funny. They're like, oh, you've been awarded Twitch affiliate. So yeah,
see?
we use Discord, or sorry, we use Twitch. At least every couple of weeks we'll do a dedicated stream, either for one of our games, for one of our friends' games, and then especially surrounding launches of titles. Like for Desert Child, how long were we at least like 72 hours. We almost nonstop for like 48 hours surrounding launch, and
Yeah, it was
then
48 hours.
another
Yes.
we did like nonstop streaming of Desert Child, and we kept swapping who was playing. We had this little like assembly, this little train of people all playing Desert Child. So it was pretty fun. It was a marathon.
Yeah, all right. I'm good. Anything else y'all want to add?
Dum,
I,
dum,
th- I, th-
dum.
I think that's pretty much it. Oh, also, if you're planning on going to events and conventions, you definitely want to be able to actually kind of set aside time to actually set up a meeting time with either your Nintendo representative or try to set up a schedule, an appointment with a Nintendo representative. It's obviously like most of your interactions with the people at Nintendo are going to be through email or different means of communication, but that person, the person contact, being able to actually put a face to the name, being able to actually kind of be familiar with that person goes a long way. You'd be surprised as to the opportunities that get handed to you just because like you're more personable and that person actually kind of knows who you are.
Yes, good point.
Yeah.
That's a another good reason not to go and get absolutely hammered at industry parties in
Oh.
the evening at the shows. All right, so as we're wrapping up here, do exclamation mark raffle. We've got some copies of Desert Child PC to give away, so we're going to close that down in just a matter of minutes. But
My summary is 3 things: give yourself enough time, communication, especially with like the distributors and stuff, and then exclusivity. What can you give them? What are they looking for? What can you give them that's special? That's my summary of working in Nintendo or just
That's things like that highlight their hardware and what they're doing.
Yep.
Awesome. So also
All
make
right.
sure and tune in every Wednesday and every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Yes, for Indie Game Business. What do we got coming up here while you're doing the raffle?
It's down there in the events. I was actually busy yesterday setting everything up.
Okay, so Friday we've got what small streamers and stream teams can do for your game with special guest, my partner Roleplay with Friends, Bradley, going to be on here. He helps me he runs Gaming Gauntlets, and he's my partner for the Twitch team, Twitch Throwdown. Oh, you won, Small Town Mama. Twice in a row right there, bam. Then on the 16th, we have an Indies Guide to Merchandise. Who's coming on that show, Jay?
That is Lottie from Weather Station, the company that made Cultist Simulator.
Cultist Simulator. I want to play that game too. Planning and specking world-class audio for your indie game, and that's on Friday the 18th. Who's on that one?
Wait, hold on. See, I've got too many things going on. I can't get stream chat to work, and so planning and specking is going to be Richard from Hex and the Audio. They're an audio sound outsourcing experts in the industry. They're going to be talking about how to plan ahead and get the audio taken care of in your indie game.
Okay, that one's on Friday the 11th. And then on the 22nd, we have Hyper Casual Games on. Hyper Casual.
That's actually going to be, that's not a company. That's an interim title for the show.
Talking about Hyper Casual Games.
That's actually going to be my friend and mentor, the guy who taught me everything that I know, Lloyd Melnick. And he is just starting a new position, but he's been most recently at Poker Stars, heading up, their slots and all that sort of thing. And so he's going to be talking about how Hyper Casual has basically taken over iOS. I think 60% of the most successful games on mobile right now are Hyper Casual mobile. And for those of you who aren't, up to speed on the latest internet made up words and lingo, Hyper Casual games are basically like WarioWare, quick little games. You've got companies that are releasing one a week, and they're huge in the industry right now.
All right.
Hold on one second. We got 2 more winners that I can't, I'm just putting in here manually because, Streamlabs isn't cooperating with me.
You broke it.
I probably did.
Would you press the reset button?
I don't know what I did, but it won't pick multiple winners. It's just picking, Small Town Mama over and over and over again. All right.
Oh, you just when it does that, you just do it again.
So Gary and Pine, you guys have won as well. Do me a favor, send me a DM to the Indie Game Business account, and I'll get your code to you.
A whisper, you mean, on Twitch?
Whatever,
yeah.
Instant message, DM, text. I don't know. We need standardized, terms for all this sort of stuff. It's like I was doing a contract last night, and I have to, you can't say subscribers when you're talking about Twitch and YouTube because it means two completely different things. So yeah, it's whatever. David Yunsung, thank you so much for being on the show. Greatly appreciate it. Yunsung, I hope you get to feeling better.
Yeah,
Very soon. But yeah,
thank you very much for having us. Well, really cool what you guys are doing here, and I really appreciate you guys having us as well.
Well, we appreciate it. And so if for the rest of the world out there, you can find them on our Discord. We have a whole section of our Discord server that's, guests of the show. So if you've got questions, directly that you want to fire directly to them, you can find everybody there. And I'm guessing they're also on their own Discord server as well. And we'll throw that link up there real quick for you. It's really tough to remember. It's basically Discord/Akupara Games.
We were lucky enough to get Akupara Games for every single URL, so we're pretty happy. That's why it helps to pick a unusual name for your studio, and you get all
that
the
is the
URLs.
problem with having the name indie, because
yes,
I mean it's good. Yeah, you got the name indie. Yeah, it's kind of a curse because there's a lot of indie.
My
1, 2, 3.
My gaming handle has been the same for 20 years, and it's such a random collection of letters that if I join something and I type in the username and it says it's already taken, it means that I've done it before and I just can't remember how to log in. So it's a good thing to be, outside the norm.
Oh.
But that's it for us today. I'll get everybody your keys. Thanks again. And
bye, everybody.
We'll see you on Friday.
See you
Thanks,
Friday.
guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Again.